Today we are going to start chapter 83 from our guideline, that is micturition. So micturition is nothing but the urge to go to the urge to urinate, that is micturition. So here some glossary terms like cystometrogram. So cystometrogram is actually a chart which is generated from cystometry. It measures the contractile force of bladder, means how much with how much contraction of the bladder the person can urinate when voiding. So this chart plots the volume of liquid in bladder against the intravesical pressure. Once we'll see that cystometrogram. So this is a graph which is called as cystometrogram. So here you can see on x-axis we have volume and y-axis we have the intravesical pressure. So actually what it says is this is a basal cystogram. At the beginning for the 100 ml of urine you can see like only small amount of contractions, whereas when the urine becomes like about 400 you can see there are like different waves of micturition, waves of contraction. This will lead to final urge of urination. So this when the volume of urine becomes 400 milliliters, then this urge of urinating because of these contractions cannot be voluntary controlled even by external anal sphincter. Till here it can be till like about 300 it can be controlled by internal anal, especially external anal sphincter, because external anal sphincter is under voluntary control, whereas internal anal sphincter is under involuntary control. So for example you can see this is a bladder. Here outside you can see this is external anal sphincter which is under voluntary control, means if you try to control it we can control, but when in this cystometrogram you can see 400, when it has reached 400 we cannot control this. Next let us see the micturition reflex. So micturition contractions are mainly induced by stretch reflex initiated by the stretch reflex by sensory stretch receptors in the bladder wall. So actually whenever the bladder wall gets filled with the urine, then it stretches. So because of this stretch it has a stretch receptors which are mainly sensory. So because of activation of the sensory stretch receptors it leads to formation of reflex. Next there is ureterorenal reflex. So blockage of ureter leading to sympathetic reflex to constrict renal arterioles, thereby decreasing the urine output from kidney. So ureterorenal reflex is where we want to block the urine formation here, that is the blockage of ureters. So you can see this is a bladder and these are the both ureters which are coming to the bladder. So if the ureter is blocked, then of course the urine cannot fill in the bladder, so that it cannot come out from the body. So here you can see the blockage of ureter leading to sympathetic reflex to constrict renal arterioles. So actually sympathetic system normally for urination the parasympathetic nervous system acts, but whenever we want to block the urine then the sympathetic system comes into action. So when the sympathetic system comes it gives a stretch, that is constriction of renal arteries. As the renal arterioles are also constricted, they also decrease the urine output from the kidney. Now micturition is a process by which the urinary bladder empties when it's full. So there are mainly two steps in micturition. The first one is the bladder fills progressively. So remember that the bladder will not fill at a time, progressively from the ureter. As the filtered out urine comes, it fills progressively until the tension in its wall rises above threshold. So it also has some threshold level. If it rises above the threshold, then only it will lead to urination. So that elicits a second step, that is a nervous reflex called micturition reflex. So the second step is formation of nervous reflex. So whenever the bladder is full, it gives because of the stretch it leads to reflex, so which empties the bladder. If it fails, at least cause conscious desire to urinate. So for example if the nervous reflex fails, then consciously we'll understand that the bladder is full and we need to urinate. So although it's autonomic spinal cord reflex, it can also be inhibited or facilitated by centers in cerebral cortex or brainstem. So of course it is autonomic, it is having autonomic spinal cord reflex, but also it can be inhibited or facilitated by centers in cerebral cortex or brainstem. So from a higher centers like cerebral cortex and brainstem also have connections with this reflex. So first we need to understand the anatomy of bladder, then we can understand this. So here you can check out the smooth muscle chamber are present in the bladder, and they have mainly two parts. The first part is called body. So you can see this is the body of bladder. So here you can see clearly this is the body of the bladder, this part body. So this is a major part where mainly urine collects, and it also has a neck. So you can see this is the bladder neck, which is also called as posterior urethra. So this bladder neck or the posterior urethra is a funnel shaped extension of body which pass inferiorly and anteriorly into the urogenital triangle, and it connects with the urethra. The lower part of bladder neck is also posterior urethra because of its relation to the urethra. And the smooth muscle of the bladder is called detrusor. So here you can see that word detrusor muscle. So the smooth muscle of the bladder is called detrusor smooth muscle, and their muscle fibers extend in all directions, and when contracted they lead to increase in pressure in the bladder like about 40 to 60 millimeters of mercury. So contraction of this major detrusor muscle will lead to major step in emptying the bladder. So whenever this detrusor muscle contracts, mainly this is a force which leads to emptying the bladder. So actually this detrusor muscle of one side of a bladder, you can see this part, it connects with some other different types of detrusor muscles, smooth muscles which are nearby, so that whenever the action potential come, it can pass directly into the other parts, so that causing contraction of entire bladder at once. So the posterior of the bladder above the neck has a small triangle. You can see this is a small triangle which is called trigone. It's its lowermost apex. It open into the posterior urethra. So you can see this is a triangle here. You can draw a triangle here. This is called as trigone, and its apex at its apex side, you can see it is even here we have a trigone. So its apex side, it is opening into the posterior urethra, or also called as bladder neck. And we also have two ureters. This ureters enters the bladder mainly at the upper angle of trigone. So here you can see they are entering at the upper angle of trigone, and their mucosa is smooth, but other parts mucosa have rugae. So remember, especially in the trigone we have the smooth mucosa. So in this diagram you can clearly see that in trigone region, that is a triangle region, you can see how smooth the mucosa is, whereas in other parts you can see like multiple foldings, the rugae are found in other parts of the bladder, but in trigone you can see the smooth muscle is really smooth. And one more thing about the ureters is they move obliquely. As the ureters move obliquely, they have one benefit, that as they are moving obliquely, the urine doesn't, during this bladder contraction, sometimes the urine may go back into the ureter. So to prevent this, they are arranged in such a way that they are arranged in an oblique manner, so that the urine will not go back from the bladder into the ureter. So you can see that point here, ureter move obliquely by detrusor muscle and then pass beneath the mucosa before emptying the bladder. And the posterior urethra have higher elastic tissue, and internal sphincter is in this area. So yes, you can see here this is the posterior urethra. Here we have internal sphincter, whereas next to it we have the external sphincter. So actually internal sphincter also prevents the empty of bladder until the pressure in the main part of the bladder increases above the critical threshold. So when only the threshold, critical threshold, the pressure in the bladder increases, then only the internal sphincter opens so that we can urinate. So beyond the posterior urethra, the urethra passed by the urogenital diaphragm, which mainly contains the external sphincter. So remember, external sphincter is present in the urogenital diaphragm, and this external sphincter is mainly voluntary skeletal muscle, and it can prevent the urination even when involuntary controls are attempting to empty the bladder. So of course it's not a voluntary control, like if our bladder is full, there is lot of pressure, our internal anal sphincter will open, but the external will be tightly closed. When the time permits, only when the environment is convenient, then only we can open this external anal sphincter, and then only we can urinate. But the body and neck of the bladder is smooth muscle. So, and one more thing is the body and neck of the bladder is made up of smooth muscle. So this is the body and also neck, both are also made up of smooth muscle, whereas this external anal sphincter, this is a skeletal muscle. So now we will see the innervation of bladder. So actually the principal nerve supply of this urinary bladder is our pelvic nerves. So remember, pelvic nerves are the principal supply. They connect the spinal cord. You can see this is the spinal cord. They connect the spinal cord by sacral plexus mainly. So sacral segments are S1, S2, S3, S4. So they are mainly connected by this, and connecting with the cord segments S2 and S3. So mainly with S2 and S3 they are connected. So causing coursing by pelvic nerves are both sensory nerve fibers and motor nerve fibers. So sensory are nothing but they are taking the information from the bladder into the spinal cord, and motor are nothing but they are coming from the spinal cord into the bladder. So mainly the sensory fibers, they detect the stretch of the bladder. So here you can see the sensory fibers mainly detect the stretch of the bladder. So stretch signals from the posterior urethra are strong and responsible for initiating the reflex they cause the emptying. So mainly the stretch signals from posterior urethra, that is where our internal anal sphincter is present, these are strong. And the motor nerves in the pelvic nerves, especially the parasympathetic nerve fibers, terminate on the ganglion cells located in the wall of the bladder. So in the wall of the bladder we also have a parasympathetic. You can see here these parasympathetic nerve fibers are especially motor nerves, means they are bringing information from the spinal cord to the bladder, whereas our sensory nerves are the one which are taking the information from the bladder to the spinal cord. So short postganglionic nerves innervate the detrusor muscle, and most important skeletal motor fibers are transmitted by the pudendal nerve to the external bladder sphincter. These are somatic fibers which innervate and control the voluntary skeletal muscles of the sphincter. So remember, as we said already, this body, this ureter, this trigone, everything is made up of smooth muscle. The neck, posterior urethra, everything is made up of smooth muscle, but the skeletal muscles are only in the sphincters. The external anal sphincter and the internal anal sphincter are both skeletal muscles, and these both skeletal muscles are mainly having a supply of pudendal nerve. The pudendal nerve also acts as efferent or also efferent, like it acts as sensory and also motor nerve fibers. Remember, these pudendal fibers are mainly the somatic fibers which innervate and control the voluntary skeletal muscle of a sphincter. So voluntary skeletal muscle is nothing but our external anal sphincter, because the internal anal sphincter is our involuntary sphincter. So also the bladder receives the sympathetic chain by hypogastric nerve with L2 segment of spinal cord. So you can see from the L2 segment you are getting the sympathetic fibers mainly by hypogastric nerve. So this also supplies our bladder, especially you can see it's supplying our body of the bladder. So the sympathetic fiber mainly stimulate the blood vessels and have little to do with the bladder contraction, and the sensory fibers pass by the sympathetic along with the sympathetic fiber. They are mainly useful to important for informing the fullness of the bladder, and also the pain fibers are also passing along with the sympathetics to the bladder. So of course from the bladder the urine is formed, and the urine is having the same composition as a fluid which is flowing by the collecting tubules, renal calyces, and also into the bladder. So wherever it is, the urine is maintaining the same composition. The urine which is flowing from the collecting ducts into the renal calyces stretch the calyces and increase the pacemaker activity, which in turn initiates the peristaltic contraction. So that spread to the pelvis and later to ureter and finally to form urine. So there are like peristaltic contractions which are going on starting from the calyces to the finally to the ureter. So because of these contractions only, it is leading to increase in a pacemaker activity, so that finally it will lead to urination. So adults ureters are like 25 to 35 centimeters. So actually this peristaltic contraction is stimulated by our parasympathetic nerve fibers, and it is inhibited by the sympathetic stimulation. So remember, the peristaltic contraction, the parasympathetic, of course when you are peaceful only you will try to urinate, whereas when you are in stressful conditions like in sympathetic stimulation, it will inhibit it. So remember, sympathetic stimulation going to inhibit the urination, whereas the parasympathetic system is going to activate or stimulate the urination. And we also have the vesicoureteral reflex. It's a urine going back to the ureter because it's abnormal. So in some abnormal conditions, like if the ureters are not like oblique or they're having some other abnormalities, they are like in different position, then sometimes the urine from the bladder may sometimes go back into the ureter. So this can lead to enlargement of ureter, and if severe, it will also lead to increase in pressure in the renal calyces and also in the medulla, mainly causing the damage to these regions. So of course, if there is black flow from ureter, it will go into the pelvis, and also sometimes it will go into the renal calyces. So now you can see the pain sensation in the ureter and the ureterorenal reflex. So ureter, which is supplied by the pain fibers, when ureter is blocked by stones or intense reflex constriction occurs with severe pain and also constrict the renal arterioles. So you can see that the pain fibers along with the sympathetic chain, they are also going there, so that whenever the ureter is blocked by stones or any condition, it will lead to severe pain. and decrease urine output from the kidney is called ureterorenal reflex, and it is important for preventing the excessive flow of fluid into the pelvis of kidney with blocked ureter. So whenever in this condition, especially this reflex, ureterorenal reflex is formed, means the blockage of ureter, this gives this it because of this reflex, it further stops the passage of urine back into the ureter, so that's what they're saying, right? It is important for preventing excessive flow of fluid into pelvis of kidney whenever there is blocked ureter. Next, no urine. So if there is no urine, then the intravascular pressure will be like 0. Whereas if we have 30 to 50 ml of urine, then the pressure increases like about 5 to 10 centimeters of water, and additional urine like about 200 to 300 milliliters would collect with only additional use and pressure. So this is caused by intrinsic tone of bladder wall itself. So it's progressively increasing. You can see at the beginning 0, later it has increased to 5 to 10, and finally you can see when 200 to 300 milliliters are come, it has increased progressively. So beyond 300 to 400 ml, the collection of more urine in the bladder may cause increased rapid pressure like about greater than 100 centimeters of water. So in this case, whenever the urine volume is like greater than 400, for sure even our voluntary external sphincter cannot also work, and it will lead to micturition. So the pressure peaks are called micturition waves in the cystometrogram, and this is caused by micturition reflex. Of course, when the micturition reflex takes place, it will lead to formation of rapid micturition waves, which will finally lead to urination. So now we will discuss the actual micturition reflex. So the micturition reflex is because of sensory stretch receptors, which are mainly in the posterior urethra. So this causes a stretch reflex, and it is conducted to the sacral segment by pelvic nerves. So first, because of the stretch, it is the information is given to pelvic nerves, and they are reflected back again to the bladder by means of parasympathetic fibers, because these are the ones which lead to urination. So the by way of this same nerves. So partially filled bladder, micturition, contraction of bladder activate the stretch receptor and cause increased sensory impulse from the bladder and posterior urethra. So this will lead to increase in reflex contraction of bladder. So the cycle gets repeated again and again until there is strong contraction and the next bladder relaxes. So until there is a strong contraction, these cycles will be continuing progressively. So single cycle will have the progressive and rapid increase in pressure, and it has a period of sustained pressure, and also it has a return of pressure to back to normal, and if not emptied, it remains for like about 1 hour. So sometimes if the bladder is not remain, it can stay up to 1 hour. That this micturition reflex may stop for like 1 hour, or before another cycle remains inhibited. So if again another cycle starts, till that time it gets inhibited. And the pudendal nerve inhibits the external anal sphincter if it is greater than voluntary. So sometimes the pressure in the bladder is so high that even the voluntary control can't hold it. Then in that time the pudendal nerve comes into action, it will lead to micturition. So urination occur, or else further fills bladder to become more powerful. So either urination occurs, or pudendal nerve, what it does, if it is not full, then it will try to bring more urine into it. So brain centers mainly facilitate or inhibit in the brainstem, mainly in the pons. So several centers are also in the cerebral cortex, which inhibit but can also become excitatory sometimes. So micturition reflex is a basic cause of micturition, but higher centers are exerting the final control. So higher centers put the partially inhibited except desired, even if desired, then only they will get activated. So higher centers prevent even if reflex occurs by toning contraction of external sphincter until it's convenient time. Of course, even sometimes if the external anal sphincter is open, but if the time is not convenient, then it will not lead to micturition. So cortical centers inhibit the sacral micturition centers to help increase in micturition reflex. It inhibits the external urinary sphincter so that urination can occur. So remember that everyone think whenever the external anal sphincter is stimulated, then it may lead to micturition. It's false. Opening of external anal sphincter is nothing but in this terms it is called as inhibition. So remember, whenever there is inhibition of external anal sphincter, then it will lead to micturition. So next we have voluntary want to urinate. First, if we want to urinate, our abdominal muscles should contract. Because of the contraction of abdominal muscles, the pressure in the bladder increases. So when the pressure in the bladder increases, the extra urine enters the bladder neck and next into the posterior urethra. Thereby it will lead to stretching of the walls. So remember, the stretch receptors, the stretch walls are present in posterior urethra. So when the walls are stretched, it stimulates the stretch receptors. This in turn lead to micturition reflex. So this will inhibit the external anal sphincter. So because of inhibition of external anal sphincter, the urine is emptied out like about 5 to 10 ml and left in the bladder. And you can see here, sometimes 5 to 10 ml may be, rarely, also sometimes it may be left in the bladder, like almost like every time everything may get out. So abnormalities in micturition. First one is atonic bladder and incontinence by destruction of sensory nerve fibers. So now you can understand, if the sensory nerve fibers are destructed, means especially they are present in stretch receptors. Stretch receptors means in the posterior urethra, right? So they can't give the stretch signals to the brain. So the efferent fibers are still intact. Even though efferent are intact, but the neurogenic connection to the brain is also intact. Only the few drops overflow if the bladder fills. This is called overflow incontinence. So here you should understand the situation that here the sensory fibers are not present, means the information from the bladder to the brain is not going. Even though efferent, the motor fibers are present, even though the connection to the brain is present, but first of all the sensory stimulation is only not going. So you can understand the situation here. Even though the urine is present in the bladder, because of its overflow only it should come out, that too drop wise it will come out, but it doesn't have the stimulation. So common cause of this, like crush injury to the sacral region of spinal cord. So if the sacral region is cut off, you can understand the sensory fibers are lost. And or any disease to the dorsal root nerve fibers that enter the spinal cord. Examples, you can take syphilis. So syphilis mainly cause a constrictive fibrosis around the dorsal root nerve fibers. So when the dorsal root nerve fibers are constricted, you can understand the information from the bladder is not going to the spinal cord. This is called mainly tabes dorsalis. And this bladder condition is called tabatic bladder. So tabes dorsalis with tabatic bladder. The next condition we have is automatic bladder caused by spinal cord damage above sacral region. So here the sensory, motor, everything is fine, but above the sacral region there is some problem, but the sacral segments are intact. So the micturition reflex occurs but not controlled by the brain, of course, because here above the sacral region they are cut off, means they are not going to the brain. So few days later the micturition reflex will be completely suppressed in the state of spinal shock, because of spinal shock they are suppressed. To prevent the bladder injury by stretching, catheterization is used, means we'll send some catheter and we'll try to remove the urine from it in this case. So later the micturition reflex develops, but it is unannounced. Why it is unannounced? Because it is not going to brain. If it goes into brain, then only it will reach your consciousness, right? So it will not go to the brain, so without knowingly you will go into the urine. So some patients can control by scratching or itching in the genital region, which elicits the reflex. So some patients do like this. So next, the third one is uninhibited neurogenic bladder, which is caused by lack of inhibitory signals. So now everything is fine, the stimulatory effects are fine, but if inhibitory effect is not there, means continuously the urine will be going on. Let us see what happens here. So it's uncontrolled frequent micturition from the partial damage on spinal cord of the brain stem that stop inhibitory signals, right? So facilitative impulses passing down keep sacral centers so excitable that even small quantity of urine elicits uncontrollable micturition reflex, which promote frequent urination. So in this the problem is the urination is like continuous and frequent, rapid. There is no inhibitory, means there is no one to stop until, like if your water content is low in your body, that's it. Otherwise there will be continuous urination. So this is all about the different abnormalities and about the micturition.